Christ's Letters, continuation of Letter 2, Day 15 of my reading and recording of Christ's Letters. Consider the way that a man, after tilling his fields, will scatter seed over the earth and cover it over. He packs up his tools and goes home, content that eventually, if there is sufficient rain, there will be food for him to feed his children. For many days, he sleeps and wakes and does nothing more to his plants. But when he visits them, he will see the blades of green pushing through the soil. Later, he will return and see the growth of stalks and leaves, and later on again, he will see the forming of the seed, and then one day, he will see that the grain is plump and golden and ready to harvest. Meanwhile, all this growth has taken place without any help from him. The wheat has grown in a marvelous way that he cannot explain. Is it magic? No, it is the work of the Father, the power, loving intelligence throughout the universe, which inspires the work and respires through it. It is the activity of the Father, which is the intelligent life of the universe. When you enter the kingdom of God, you have a good feeling. You feel happy and joyous. Can you imagine how a woman would feel if she lost a large sum of money and wondered how she would feed her children? The woman of the house would be in tears and would sweep the house so thoroughly that there would not be a speck of dust. Then, hidden in a dark corner, she finds the treasured piece of silver, and immediately her tears are dried. She begins to smile and then feels so alive and so joyous that she rushes out of her house to call in her neighbors to have a celebration party. Where she had thought she had lost everything, she was now rich after all. So is it when you find the kingdom of heaven, the kingdom of God. Instead of tears and fears and hunger and sickness, you find the peace, joy, plenty, and health of the kingdom of God. You will never experience any kind of lack again. The kingdom of God can also be likened to a very rich man who was a dealer in pearls. All his life, he had wanted to find a special pearl which would outshine all others. It would be flawless and perfect, and he would be the envy of every other dealer. One day, he found such a pearl, beautiful beyond imagining, perfect beyond all others. He sold everything he owned. He abandoned all that he had accumulated to buy this pearl and was happy beyond all dreaming. What does this mean? It means that all the things he had previously valued in his life, his richly furnished house, his valuables, his way of life, plenty of food and drink, he gladly gave them all up in order to possess the treasure beyond price. The knowledge leading him into the kingdom of God, where happiness is a state of mind which cannot be touched by the outer world with all its cares and worries. The kingdom of God is within you. You enter the kingdom of God when you realize fully that the Father is active at all times within you. It is a state of mind, of perception and understanding that the reality behind and within all things visible is the Father and is beautiful and perfect, and that all the things which are contrary to beauty, harmony, health, abundance are the creations of man's wrong thinking. How I have grieved over you who suffer, but you do not need to suffer if you listen to what I have to tell you. But I must warn you that the path leading into the kingdom of heaven is difficult to follow because it means that, first, you have to deal with yourself. Why is it that the self you have to deal with? Because out of your desire to protect and promote your own personal good, come all your selfish thoughts, words, and actions. You will probably ask, why should I have to worry about this? If what you say is true, that there is no punishment, that God sees not our evil, then why should we be concerned about the way we behave? There is so much here to be learned that I hardly know where to begin. As I have explained, as I have explained, you draw your life from the Father. Therefore, you draw your capacity to think and love from the Father. Even as Father intelligence is creative, so is your consciousness creative. With your minds and hearts, you actually form the plans of your own lives and experiences. And what kind of lives do you plan and form in your minds? If someone annoys or hurts you, you retaliate in some way or another. You believe that if your eye is taken, you must expect the adversary's eye in return. You believe that whoever kills should be killed as punishment and compensation. You believe that whoever robs you should pay the price, that whoever steals your wife should be stoned along with your wife. You believe in the extraction of payment for every evil thing that comes your way. Since it is human nature to hurt others, and you have been taught to retaliate, your lives are a continual scene of warfare. Warfare in the home amongst husbands, wives, children and neighbors, and public figures and between nations. Your Father knows nothing of this warfare in your lives, but knows the stress in your minds and bodies arising from this warfare, but can do nothing. Nothing to ease your pain, until you yourselves stop the warfare. You yourselves must cease your fighting and live in peace with your family, neighbors, employers, public figures, and other countries. Only then can the Father love work take place in your minds, hearts, bodies, and lives. Only then will you be able to recognize and see the love work being done in you and for you by the Father. Number 6. You reap exactly as you sow. Remember also the great law, you reap exactly as you sow. You cannot pick figs from brambles or grapes from thorn trees or harvest wheat from weeds. Think about this and understand this parable because it is very important to you, not only today but also throughout all your days and years to come, even into eternity. So, if you want to change your lives, change your thoughts. Change your words arising from those thoughts. Change your actions arising from those thoughts. What is in your minds will create all your experiences, your sickness, poverty, unhappiness, and despair. A man shouted out to me, "Tell us, teacher, how do we remain peaceful with our neighbors when they themselves will give us no peace?" I said to him, smiling, "When your neighbor comes to you and says he has to travel some distance away and does not want to go alone and asks you to go with him, what do?" The man laughed. "If my neighbor wanted to take me away from what I was doing, I would not be pleased. I would tell him to find someone else to go with him as I was busy." "And how would your neighbor feel?" I asked. The man shrugged. "I don't know." "And next time you needed him to do you a favor, how will he respond to your asking?" The man was no longer laughing. He did not reply. Another man said, "He will swear at him and tell him to go elsewhere for help." I said to the people, "He has answered rightly. And how will he feel?" I pointed to the man who had first spoken, smiling at him. A woman shouted above the laughter, "He will tell everyone he meets what a selfish and miserable neighbor he has. Perhaps he will want to hurt him in some way." There were shouts of agreement and I nodded. Yes, he will have forgotten that he was once asked by his neighbor to walk 1 or 2 miles with him, and he refused. He will not see the law of reaping and sowing at work in his life. He set it in motion when he refused to go a mile with his neighbor, and now he is reaping of his attitudes and actions. Of what use to be angry when he has created the situation all by himself? The people laughed and nodded and spoke to one another. Never before had they heard such knowledge of human behavior. Here was an entirely new teaching. I said to them, I advise you, when your neighbor comes to you asking you to walk a mile with them or anything else that will make him more at ease and happy, first think about what you would like him to do for you if you also have a need. How would you like him to respond to your request? A murmur swept through the crowd, and I could see that they understood what I was telling them. In fact, if your neighbor asks you to go 1 mile, do it with a happy, easy agreement and be prepared to go on to do 2 miles if necessary. When you refuse people, you do not realize it, but you tighten up your minds and bodies, ready to protect yourself from being forced to do something you do not want to do. You tighten up your minds and bodies, and the Father is tightened up also, and cannot do its love work within you, and out of this tightening comes sickness. Again, you may meet someone sorely in need, who is cold and unhappy. He may ask you for your coat. Don't pass him by, glaring at him. Some people laughed. They knew this was what they would do. No, give him your coat, and if he is really cold, give him your cloak also. Go your way rejoicing. Rejoicing? A disbelieving voice asked. I laughed and said, Yes, my friend, rejoicing. Firstly, because you had a coat and a cloak to give, and then rejoicing because you realize that now you have a lack of a coat and cloak yourself. Your Father within you will shortly return the coat and cloak to you in some surprising way. If, however, you give him coat and cloak and then continue walking, grumbling to yourself, Now why did I do that? I was foolish. Now I will be cold instead of him, and people will laugh at me because I have given my coat and cloak and left myself with nothing. And what will my wife say when I get home? The people were nodding and laughing, enjoying the picture of the man who gives away coat and cloak and then remembers what an evil thing he has done to himself. I knew that very often they did deprive themselves to help others and then regretted their generosity afterwards. I waited a moment and then shouted in a loud voice to get their full attention. But have I not told you that you reap as you sow? Have I not told you clearly that your thoughts, words, actions create your future circumstances? So what do you want to sow to reap after you have given your coat and cloak to the stranger? Do you want your gifts restored to you, or do you want to be without coat and cloak for a long, long time? Because that is what will happen to you if you go on your way angry and upset because you gave away your coat and cloak. Your words and actions will seal, make hard like rock, the poverty you have brought upon yourself by giving away your coat and cloak. The people were no longer smiling and laughing. They were very quiet and listening intently. Remember, first do to others what you would have them do to you. Then there will be peace and contentment in your minds and hearts, and the Father will be able to do its love work within your bodies, minds, and hearts. Give and give abundantly, and rejoice that you have gifts to give to those in need, because as you give, so will your gifts be restored to you in the way that you most need them. Give with happy hearts. Give in the faith and knowledge that where there is lack in your lives, so will the Father do His love work abundantly in you and for you. And of thank you, I love you, goodbye, God